You know, when we look back at old history stories, it's so easy to just see them as a list of dates and names of empires that don't exist anymore. But I've been thinking a lot about the actual people lately. Ordinary folks who woke up on what seemed like a perfectly normal Tuesday morning, made breakfast, and went about their day, never dreaming that everything they loved was about to be completely wiped out. It makes you think about your own life. If someone walked into your living room right now and told you that you had exactly 10 minutes to leave your house forever and you could never come back, what would you grab? What would you take with you if you knew you could never go home again? Well, thousands of years ago, a whole community of people had to face that exact choice, and that's where this story really starts. Back in 1967, a group of researchers dug down into the volcanic ash of a little Mediterranean island called Santorini, and underneath all that gray dust, they found an ancient town called Akrotiri that had been buried out of sight for over 3,000 years. Now, you might think a town that old would just be a bunch of simple mud huts and primitive tools. But when you look at how these people actually lived, it just takes your breath away. They lived in beautiful 3-story stone homes. They had indoor plumbing with running hot and cold water long before most of the world had even thought of it. They were wonderful sailors, traveling across the open water to trade their goods with neighbors far and wide. But what really stays with you when you look at their lives isn't the buildings or the technology. It's who they were as a family. They left behind these gorgeous, colorful paintings on their walls, and when you look at them, you don't see pictures of wars or bloody battles or powerful kings. You just see people celebrating festivals, enjoying nature, and living in peace. It was a place where women were highly respected, running businesses and holding a real place of honor in the community. They had built a beautiful life for themselves, a quiet, peaceful paradise. But they didn't get to keep it. And you know, when you look at the clues left behind in the dirt, the story takes a turn that just doesn't make any sense at all. It leaves us with a riddle that historians are still arguing about to this day. Now, somewhere around 1600 BC, the big volcano that this island was sitting on suddenly woke up. And it didn't just erupt, it completely shattered that part of the world. It was one of the biggest volcano explosions humanity has ever seen. So violent that it caused massive tidal waves that swallowed up the coastline for miles around. The smoke and ash were so thick that literally blocked out the sun, turning the sky dark and changing the weather all over the world for months. For a few terrifying months, the global sky went dark. But here is the strangest part of the story. When people finally dug that town out of the ash centuries later, they expected to find tragedy. They thought they'd find thousands of skeletons frozen in place, just like what happened to the poor souls of Pompeii. Instead, they found a complete ghost town. There wasn't a single body left in the ruins, no piles of gold or jewelry left behind on the tables. It turns out these people had warning. You can see clues where they had actually gone into the streets after an earlier earthquake to clean up the bricks and fix their walls. They were trying so hard to save their home. But when that mountain gave them one final sign, they knew it was over. They didn't panic. They quietly packed up their most precious belongings, walked down to the water together, and stepped onto their wooden boats. They sailed out into a dark, rough ocean just to get away from the fire. They managed to escape the island, but that is right where they disappeared into the dark. So where do you go when the sea is on fire and the only home you've ever known is buried under a mountain of ash? They couldn't go back. There was nothing left to go back to. And that's where a bit of a darker mystery comes in, and it actually connects right back to those mysterious sea peoples we talked about last time. You see, for generations, these families had to live entirely on their ships. They became wanderers on the water, homeless, hungry, and hardened by a long, brutal fight just to stay alive. And a lot of historians think that the grandchildren of these very refugees eventually became those fierce, desperate invaders who came back centuries later to fight the empires that had turned them away. Other people look at this beautiful, advanced island that sank into the deep water and wonder if this real-life tragedy was the true story that inspired the legend of the lost city of Atlantis. We'll probably never know the absolute truth. The ocean does a very good job of keeping its secrets. But the next time you see a picture of an old ancient ruin, don't just look at the stone, cold walls. Think about the footsteps of the real people who had to run out into the night. It really makes you look at your own life a little differently, doesn't it? What would you take if you knew you could never come home? If you enjoyed these kinds of history stories that focus on the real human side of things, I'd love if you'd subscribe to the channel so we can look into these old mysteries together. Please leave in the comments your thoughts. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in our next story.